Karen knew something was going bad the moment her manager's voice started shaking every time he said the word synergy. He was a soft man named Peter, the kind who used too many smiley faces in emails, and even he sounded scared. Then the new director walked in. His name was Mark. He was the kind of man who entered an old office like he owned the rent on every chair. He wore a shiny watch that was trying too hard and trousers that were tighter than HR would like. "Let's shake things up," he said on his first day. Like this 40-year-old logistics company was a young tech startup and not a place held together by legacy code, dying printers, and 3 women called Susan. Karen sat in the back of the room watching him talk. She didn't roll her eyes, but she wanted to. She had been there 7 years. She knew what actually kept the place running, and it wasn't speeches. The company always looked calm from the outside. Reports went out on time. Clients saw dashboards with neat colors. The board saw steady growth. But behind that, there was Karen. She was the one fixing broken data jobs at 11 p.m., the one cleaning up after interns who thought a spreadsheet was coding, the one quietly rerouting a pipeline so no one would notice the sales numbers hadn't updated since May.
She wasn't loud. She didn't post on LinkedIn. She didn't go for drinks with management. But the junior staff knew.
Ask Karen. They'd say when something refused to run.
She liked that.
She liked the quiet power of doing the real work while other people did the talking. Then Mark started changing things.
And people who only knew how to talk suddenly had titles.
Within 2 weeks, Mark restructured the analytics team.
That was his word.
What it meant was, he fired 2 people who knew what they were doing, promoted a guy who played weekend golf with his cousin, and placed Karen under a new lead called Tim, a man who once asked if Python was that snake app. In the meeting, Mark smiled at her like he was doing her a favor. "This will give you room to focus," he said.
Karen looked straight at him.
"I was already focused," she said.
Tim laughed like it was a joke. Mark didn't.
After that, Karen stopped assuming competence.
She watched. She listened.
She started saving things. Because people who loved the word optics always asked someone else to bend the truth.
The first time Mark asked her to change numbers, he did it like it was nothing. He came to her desk with a printout.
"Hey, Karen," he said, voice light. "This churn spike looks ugly.
Can you smooth it for the investor deck?" She spun the chart toward him.
"That spike is real," she said. "It came from the bad release last month. We have to show it."
Mark leaned in.
"We don't have to show it right now," he said, smiling. "We show it after they give us money."
Karen shook her head.
"Compliance will see the audit trail." Mark gave a small laugh, a laugh of someone who had never been blamed for anything in his life.
"Come on, you've been here a while.
You know how this game works." That was the moment she knew, this was not a mistake.
This was a pattern.
That night, she went home and backed up the real data, the clean, raw truth, to her own secure vault.
Not to break anything. To remember.
Mark moved fast, and he moved loud. Soon he was the one being quoted in the internal newsletter as the visionary modernizing analytics.
He started speaking on calls Karen wasn't invited to.
Her work was in the slides, but her name wasn't.
On good days she was CC'd. On bad days she found out after the meeting. Still, she stayed calm. She trained new analysts. She rewrote ugly SQL.
She cleaned logs from the experiments of Mark's cousin, a new hire named Josh who called himself an Excel ninja.
And Karen kept collecting things.
Slack messages where Mark said just make it pretty. Emails where he waved off validation. Calendar invites where reviews were quietly pushed past the acquisition date.
She didn't rant. She didn't post.
She built a record, piece by piece, because she knew one thing, people like Mark always thought the story mattered more than the system.
She was the system. It wasn't only Karen who noticed the cracks. The junior analysts whispered in their side channel about dashboards not matching sales numbers. Sales complained that their pipeline report felt wrong. One intern, a girl named Mia, even sent a brave email. "I think the client report is using outdated data." The next day, Mia was moved to marketing. Nobody said why.
That was when Karen felt something cold settle in her.
This wasn't carelessness. This was pressure. Investors were coming. An acquisition was close.
And Mark wanted numbers that smiled, not numbers that spoke.
So Karen finished her quiet plan. She set up layered access.
She documented nothing in the places they ignored.
She made sure the system protected itself.
Not to punish the company, to make sure no one could rewrite the truth after she was gone. The blow came on a Monday video call.
The team was all there, cameras on, faces tired. Mark leaned into his webcam like a pastor about to deliver bad news to a crowd. His smile was too soft. "Before we wrap," he said, looking off screen, "we need to address some underperformance in analytics." The air tightened. People stopped typing. Karen sat still. Mark continued, "Karen's reports have not met the strategic pace we need going forward. Leadership has reviewed this." He paused like he practiced in the mirror. "Effective immediately, Karen is no longer with the company." A few people gasped. A new intern's eyes went wide. HR popped up, robotic. "Thank you, Mark. Karen, we will follow up offline. Please consider this your formal notice." Mark wasn't finished. He leaned in, smirked, and said, "Karen, try not to embarrass yourself again." Then he muted. It was meant to humiliate her. It didn't. Karen didn't argue. She didn't cry. She closed the meeting window the way someone closes a finished spreadsheet. Then she stood up, walked to her small office, placed her badge in the middle of the desk and turned off the light. As she walked out past the same posters she'd seen for 7 years, integrity, teamwork, data-driven decisions, she felt something odd. Not fear. Not sadness. Lightness. Because she knew something the rest of them didn't. When you fire the person who built the machine, you don't just lose a worker. You lose the map. And they had fired their map. She hadn't sabotaged anything. She hadn't touched production. She had simply kept the keys she was never properly asked to hand over. They said, "There's no need to return after today." She thought, "You won't be able to run tomorrow." At home, in her quiet apartment, Karen opened her personal terminal. Not the company laptop, her own. She ran a silent watcher she had prepared months ago, the one that only observed. 10 minutes after her account was disabled, an alert appeared. Environment schema mismatch. Missing keys. Dependency failure. She almost laughed. They had tried to start the main analytics engine without her root keys. Of course it failed. Inside the company, chaos began in small circles. A junior analyst pinged. "Hey, does anyone know where Karen kept the Q2 model?" Someone from engineering wrote, "The churn pipeline is not populating. Can someone confirm if the cache job is running?" Then Josh, Mark's cousin, replied in the public channel, "What's a cache job?" The silence after that was louder than shouting. From the outside the system looked simple, a nice dashboard, drag-and-drop widgets, clean colors that made executives clap. But under it, Karen had built a real backbone, timed keys, nested permissions, logic that only woke up when called in the right order. You couldn't force it. You had to understand it. She had suggested a full handover months ago. HR marked it not critical. Mark said, "We'll just record a video if needed." There was no video. So by lunchtime on the first day without her, people were digging through old emails, Confluence pages, even her old tickets. The documentation stopped 6 months back. After that there were only notes like "deprecated unless emergency" and "don't touch unless you hate yourself." In a private tech channel, one engineer finally asked, "Did we really fire the only person who knew how this ran?" No one answered. Mark told everyone it was legacy issues and technical debt. But Karen, watching from her own screen, knew the truth. It wasn't debt. It was design. And the collapse had only just begun. Day 2 without Karen, the problems stopped being quiet. At 9:14 a.m., sales posted in the company-wide channel, "Why does the dashboard show negative churn for West Region?" 5 minutes later, marketing asked, "Where did the Q3 forecast tab go?" Nobody answered. Tim, the fake lead placed over Karen, tried to act calm. "We're just refreshing environments," he typed. Then, privately, he messaged engineering, "Can someone restore Karen's pipeline?" Engineering replied, "We can't restore what wasn't backed up." In a small Zoom room, Tim snapped, "Didn't she leave documentation?" A senior dev named Leo shook his head. "She tried. The ticket was deprioritized." Tim rubbed his forehead. "Mark's not going to like this." Leo said, "Mark is the reason we don't have it." Meanwhile, on the inside, people started whispering, "She built this whole thing alone. Why didn't anyone make her hand it over? Why did they fire her on a call?" The story was changing. Karen wasn't the problem anymore. The people who removed her were. By late morning the company tried the simplest fix, just roll it back. Mark stood in a glass room with the CTO, a quiet man called Anand. "Restore Friday's state," Mark said. or last week's.
I don't care, I just need the dashboards back before the board call.
Anand typed, waited, frowned. We don't have a full production backup, he said. Mark blinked.
What do you mean we don't? We do nightly jobs.
Partial snapshots, Anand said. Folder level. Not a full environment with keys.
Karen managed the live schema.
Mark's jaw tightened.
So rebuild it.
Anand looked up.
We had a person for that. At the table, an analyst said without thinking, did we fire our continuity plan?
The room went silent. Mark tried to recover.
Okay, let's not be dramatic.
It's just old scripts.
We've been meaning to modernize. Anand didn't argue, but everyone in the room knew this wasn't modernization.
This was a plane in the air with no pilot.
While they panicked, Karen ate breakfast.
She wasn't touching their systems. She was only watching the alerts she had set up months ago.
At 10:32 a.m., a new one came in. Unauthorized override attempt detected.
Failsafe engaged.
Forecast core frozen.
She smiled.
That line meant somebody, probably Josh, had tried to hardcode a new baseline into the churn model to fix the numbers.
But she had written the model to protect itself.
If someone tried to cheat, it didn't break loudly.
It just stopped.
Back in the office, Josh sent a frantic message. Hey, I think the forecast job is not returning anything. A junior replied, it's blank. Josh said, like, blank blank.
Tim entered, can you patch it manually?
Josh, I don't know where she pulled raw engagement from. Then the real punch landed. A client success manager wrote, Client A is asking why their report hasn't updated in 2 days. What do we tell them? Mark answered fast, tell them we're doing a security update.
Karen almost laughed. Security was not the thing that was missing. Understanding was.
Around noon, investors started sniffing trouble. One of the big clients sent an email. We noticed inconsistencies in the churn and renewal report. Please resend the original format we used previously. Also, where is Karen?
That last line hurt them the most.
In the internal call, Mark said, we can't tell them we fired her. Say she's consulting. HR said, she's not consulting. Then say she's on leave.
She's not on leave.
Mark snapped, then say we are in transition.
People stared at him.
Anand finally said, they are not asking about her status. They are asking for the data she made. Outside the call, staff were screenshotting broken dashboards. One wrote to another, this is what happens when you fire the only person who knew what she was doing. The other replied, he thought she was replaceable. He thought the numbers were decoration. At 2:07 p.m., legal received a box.
No return address. No logo.
Just a neat label, for compliance review. Inside was a USB, a printed index, and one short note, you wanted speed. Here's the cost.
Legal plugged it in.
What opened was not rage, not ranting, not messy accusations.
It was clean.
Folders named Original Reports versus Investor Reports. Slack approvals. Audit trail skipped. In one PDF, the company churn was 5.8%. In the investor version Mark sent, it was 3.1%. In a Slack screenshot, Mark wrote to Josh, if anyone asks, say it's seasonality.
No one checks the back end. Legal stared at it. Did she send this? One asked. There's no name, the other said. But she kept everything.
They escalated it in 15 minutes. Compliance, CFO, CTO, CEO. The people who hadn't replied to her transfer request were now reading her proof.
That afternoon, HR tried a different approach.
They sent an email to Karen. Hi Karen, we hope you are well.
We want to ensure your departure was not connected to any ethical concerns.
Can you please confirm the separation was amicable? Karen read it, took a sip of tea, and closed it. 10 minutes later, legal sent a more serious message. We request your assistance to clarify certain discrepancies in our reporting to investors. We are committed to a non-adversarial conversation.
She closed that too.
Because now the company wasn't talking to an employee.
They were talking to a witness. Inside, Mark was sweating through meetings.
We can fix this, he said. We just need to communicate better.
Compliance shook her head.
This isn't communication. This is falsified metrics. Anand added quietly, and we can't rebuild her environment.
For the first time, Mark had no buzzword. The next morning, the board had a call with investors. It was supposed to be routine. Halfway through, an older investor asked, "Why are the churn numbers frozen? And why is last week's report different from the one we have here?"
Silence.
Mark started, "We're modernizing our stack." The VC rep cut him off. "Are you telling us you presented altered data?" Mark said, "No, because if so, we're pausing our pipeline." That was the moment the story stopped being an internal embarrassment and became a business risk.
The call ended early.
Right after, the CEO messaged, "Who approved these numbers?" Legal replied with a single screenshot, Mark's Slack message, "Polish however you have to. It's all optics." The CEO didn't reply for 5 minutes. Then, suspend him. Mark, the man who told Karen try not to embarrass yourself, was locked out of his email by 4 p.m. Meanwhile, staff were asked to upload anything you have from Karen. People searched old folders, old chats. Someone found her original knowledge transfer plan in their email. The one she sent 3 months ago. At the bottom was a red note, deprioritized at request of Director Mark. They showed it to the CEO. He stared at it. "So she tried," he said. Anand nodded. "Yes, she tried." In a late-night crisis meeting, compliance said, "We don't have a working copy of current production. No map, no audited pipeline, no proof the reports we sent match the real data." The CEO asked, "Can we just turn her account back on?" Anand said, "No. Her credentials were single owner. She was supposed to rotate them." "Then rotate them now." "We can't. We don't have the chain." That was when a young analyst whispered, "She was the backup." No one argued. Because it was true. At home, Karen finished writing something she drafted weeks ago, a clean, simple article. No company name. No personal attack. Just, "How I left quietly and took your fake numbers with me." She posted it at 7:04 a.m. on an anonymous blog. By 9:30 a.m., people on LinkedIn had already matched the screenshots in her post to the ones in cached investor decks on the company site. By noon, partners were emailing, "Is this about you?" The company tried to say, "We are undergoing internal review." But the screenshots were clear, modified files, timestamps, Slack messages with instructions to fake seasonality. Karen didn't gloat. She didn't even refresh the post. She made breakfast. She watered her plant. The numbers told the story by themselves. Inside the company, the mood turned from panic to exhaustion. People sat in a bright boardroom under cold lights, scrolling through broken dashboards that wouldn't load. The Jenkins job showed. License verification failed. Owner authentication missing. Someone said, "Can we rebuild from staging?" Someone else said, "Staging doesn't match production." The head of compliance summed it up, "We don't have a clean audit trail from the moment Mark started pushing investor-facing numbers." The CEO ran a hand over his face. "So what do we tell the SEC if they ask?" She answered slowly, like talking to children. "We tell them a director suppressed a handover, altered KPI presentations, and fired the architect who could have fixed it." In her apartment, Karen opened a final email draft to the board, the one with every ignored ticket, every skipped review, every proof that she tried to do it right, and hit send. Not revenge. Record. And the system, at last, was telling the truth. By the next day, the story wasn't just in their building, it was in their industry. A partner company sent a polite but sharp message, "We are placing all joint projects on hold pending your internal review." Another client wrote, "We would like access to the original analyst, Karen, who handled our reports." HR replied with a template, "She is no longer with the company." The client answered, "That is the problem." Inside, people started protecting themselves. Managers dug up old emails to prove, "I was not in that meeting." Someone who used to praise Mark now said, "I always thought he was rushing things." In a small side chat, one of the juniors messaged Karen on her personal email, "We miss you. They are finally admitting you built everything." Karen smiled at her screen but didn't reply right away. She didn't need to go back. The point had already landed. The board held a long, tired meeting that evening. No snacks. No small talk. Just laptops and worried faces. They reviewed the USB from compliance review. They saw the Slack where Mark said, "No one checks the back end." They saw the forecast edited 6 minutes before a call.
They saw the handover ticket marked not critical. When they finished, the room was quiet. The CEO said, "So this could trigger regulators."
Compliance nodded. Yes.
Because data sent to investors must match the real system. Hers shows it didn't. The CEO asked, "Can we claim it was a mistake?" "Not with those messages," Compliance said.
He knew.
Anand added, almost gently, "She didn't break the system. The system refused to lie without her."
That line stayed in the room like smoke.
Someone finally said, "We need to reach out to her again." The CEO said, "She already reached out to us. We just didn't listen." Karen's last move was simple. She sent the board a clean PDF, the Monroe Report, but now in this version her name was replaced with kilometer. Inside was everything: dates of her first warning, the knowledge transfer plan she tried to start, the times Mark pushed fake numbers, the list of people copied, and the note: "This could have been prevented." No anger, no insults. Just time, evidence, order. When the CEO read it, he said quietly, "She was never trying to burn us." Anand said, "She was trying to protect the data. And we fired her." On a Zoom. Outside, the company started to post public statements. "We are improving our data governance. We are committed to transparency. We thank former team members for their contributions." None of them said her name. They didn't have to. Everyone inside knew who had actually kept the lights on. After that, the company spent weeks rebuilding what she had done in 7 years. Vendors were called. Consultants were hired. Expensive ones. They tried to reverse engineer her logic. They got parts of it right, but it was slower, heavier, clumsier. Because you can copy a file, but you can't copy the person who knew why it was written that way. Mark was suspended pending investigation, then quietly removed. His last company post, the one with a rocket emoji and up and to the right, was deleted. In the hallway, people whispered, "He told her not to embarrass herself. Look who's embarrassed now." The juniors, the ones Karen had trained, started using her name in full now. Karen did it like this. Karen said always keep raw truth. In a way, she was back in the building without ever stepping inside. Not as an employee. As a standard. Karen didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't make a revenge video with dramatic music. One evening, she closed her laptop, looked around her quiet apartment, and felt that soft, calm satisfaction of someone who told the truth and let the truth do the work. She poured tea. Outside, the city moved on. Somewhere, a regulator was reading her packet. Somewhere else, a junior analyst was saying, "Document everything," because she had said it first. The company would survive, probably, just smaller, slower, wiser. But they would never again say, "We can just replace her." Because now they knew, she hadn't been a data person. She had been the architecture. And when they cut her out without listening, the system simply told on them. She never raised her voice. She never cursed them out. She just kept receipts. And in the end, it wasn't rage that ruined them. It was record keeping.